Welcome to We Plus You, straight talk about conscious business collaboration. I have with me today Corey Jahnke, who's a good friend, and I love doing these shows with him. And today we're going to talk about, as some of Corey's wonderful terminologies are, we're going to be talking about stamping out the ants and removing some of the monkeys from our back. And we're going to be talking about unconscious thought patterns that are basically taking us out. And we're also going to talk about what type of decision maker you are. And then tying in with all of that, we're also going to be addressing the blame game. So welcome, Corey. So happy to have you with me here today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here tonight. I'm just totally on fire. I think it's been a great week for both of us. We've both made a lot of fantastic commentary on our comments, and we're ready to really share some good information tonight.
So I would like to start with, let's talk a little bit. We in the last episode, we actually talked about the couple posts you did about the monkeys and the ants. But this newest post you did, you went a little bit into more of how to stamp out the ants, and you got a little bit more into what your definition of what those ants were. So can you actually let everyone know, because obviously a lot of people have no idea what we're talking about. We're talking about ants and monkeys. So why don't you share with everyone a little bit about what does stamping out the ants, or what are the ants, and a little bit about the monkeys.
Well, I'm a humongous fan of Dr. Daniel Amen, who is probably the leading brain specialist in our country. And when he talks about the ants, he talks about automatic negative thoughts. And so what happens is that most of us think that our thoughts are real. And I think, as you and I have discussed, a lot of times we think they're so real because over time our thoughts morph into feelings and impulses. So, you get a certain stimulus, a certain smell, a certain song, a certain person, and all of a sudden you're reacting in a certain way, and you just feel like that's part of you because it's a feeling. So what we need to do is we need to really adopt a plan to go ahead and make sure that we stamp out those ants. Because a lot of times those ants, they lead to anxiety, depression, other mental disorders. And Dr. Amen said that if you have unresolved depression issues, if you have unresolved anxiety issues, that can increase your chance for Alzheimer's disease by as much as 50%. So I wrote this blog to make it really simple as to what are 5 things that you can do to go ahead and stamp out the ants, the automatic negative thoughts. And I got to be thinking about that, and I got to be realizing that one of the greatest ways is to turn them into apes. And so that's number 5. So the story started out in the blog about the gentleman that came into the pharmacy, and he's one of these guys with incredible hair spikes. He's got green fluorescent hair spikes and a chain from his nose to his ear, and I think he's just a great guy. He's so fun to deal with, but to me, he's not the guy with the hair. His name is Eric. But after I was done dealing with Eric, one of my coworkers looks at me and goes, "Corey, how can you be so nice to Mohawk guy?" And, this person is a great person, except that she really, really judges people very harshly. And that, I think, leads to a lot of her own anxiety and depression issues. So I said to her, well, you know what? I'm not allowed to value judge people. And that really knocked her back on her feet. And so I said, well, the reason I'm not allowed to is because it causes my brain to think about, wow, we must be value judgers. So it judges me. And of course, your brain always judges you harsher than anyone else. So that was the first one. If you want to be someone who doesn't have so many automatic negative thoughts, make sure that your thoughts towards others are positive. The second one, and I think this is really important, is that I said that I keep a thought journal. And what that means is that I always write down when I have negative thoughts about myself or about others so that I can challenge their validity. And if you can do that, then you can change those feelings and impulses into something that you can recognize and battle. The third thing that I do is I wear a rubber band. Today it's pink. And if I have a negative thought, I snap it. If I have a really negative thought, I snap it really hard. And what that does is that brings me back into reality. The fourth thing is one of the reasons I'm here. I surround myself with really good, positive people like you, Carly, and I surround myself with positive information, and I feed my brain the best possible uplifting information I can so that my brain knows how much I love and care about it. And then the fifth thing is that I go ahead and adopt a or you could think mentality, which means that if someone comes into my pharmacy and I were to think of him as Mohawk Guy, I would say to myself, Or you could think, isn't that awesome how he goes ahead and creatively expresses himself in a way that hurts no one else? I think that's really cool. So when we create other ways of thinking about a subject, we create APEs, automatic positive expressions. When we do that, then all of a sudden we're taking over our brain and we're much healthier and happier. What do you think about that?
So I'm going to go back to a few things you said. One of the things I wanted to go back to is, and we're going to tie in that with the blame game. Having, as you said, your coworker came to you and said, how could you be so nice to Mohawk guy? Because he obviously looked different. He had, funky colored hair. And so we as people, it's very interesting. We have a need. Now this is tying into the unconscious storytelling and the ants, if you will. These unconscious negative thoughts that we're telling ourselves each and every day, that this person is negative, or because they may look a little bit different, or they may not look as clean as you would like, or they're not dressing, and from your terminology, mind you, that they're not dressing appropriately. So that ties into the blame game. I think we have a culture of people that need to blame others in order to validate their own opinions or validate their own life. Do you not think that that has been the case, especially working where you work? I'm sure you see that a lot, and also dealing with coworkers, that they have a need to blame others instead of actually owning up to their stuff or addressing it in a way that they can actually come clean, if you will, and go, okay, maybe I don't know this, or maybe that person made me feel uncomfortable, and actually explore, why did Mohawk guy make her feel uncomfortable? And I think it's very important that we start to look in ourselves, look within, to understand or see why it is that that person is triggering us, or why that person is making us feel a certain way.
Oh, I think it's incredibly accurate on your part, because one of the things that happened when I did that post is that I got a number of comments from people who have children that are going through that creative expression phase, and they don't really know for sure how to handle it. The one lady says, I was just in tears over my son. And one of the things that I talked about was, the story that we tell ourselves is just so important. So we tell ourselves a story about, well, I can't be really doing that bad because I'm not Mohawk guy. And so Mohawk guy becomes a scapegoat for their own inadequacies, which is really terrible. And one of the things that's been really, really powerful for me this week is I've been watching a lot of Brendan Burchard videos from his High Performance Academy. And what Brendan talks about is going ahead and telling yourself the best possible story and going forward, rather than wasting a lot of energy going backwards and saying, well, this happened, therefore I can't be the person that I want to be because I'm stuck in the past. And it's interesting because if you hear people continue to tell that story, it's almost like they enjoy being a victim. And so they're being a victim, in this case, of Mohawk guy, because it's easier than, like you said, saying, well, what in it in me is keeping me from not value judging people? And again, once you value judge people, then your brain says, hey, this must be how we operate, so then I have to turn it around and value judge myself.
Now, tying back to the victim energy, as you know, I've had a quite interesting medical history, and I hear that all the time where people are like, well, I'm not feeling well today, or, well, I've been through this, I've been raped, I've been through physical abuse, I've been through verbal abuse, I don't have any money, I don't. And I tell people over and over and over again, if you want something badly enough, you will always find a way. And as you've heard the story, and many other people have heard the story, I did a radio interview from a hospital wheelchair in the courtyard because I had a commitment. So we have to get out of the box. There really is no box. You can't blame a situation. You can't blame a surgery. You can't blame an illness for how you're choosing to be. In other words, yes, I was in pain. I could have been moody, I could have been mean, I could have canceled the interview, and yet nobody cares exactly what I'm going through. They want to see the best of me in that moment. So in that moment, my lights came on, I put up my energy, I put aside what I was dealing with in that moment. Yes, it is reality that I was dealing with something in the moment. However, I still have the choice in how I'm going to impart to others what I'm going through. I could play the woe, victim is me, and my life is so crappy, and I don't feel good, and all this other stuff. Or even as you and I are having these discussions, even though right now I'm waiting for my next surgery, I'm still finding other ways of still empowering and inspiring other people and still working with my clients. I'm using a lot more Skype, having these wonderful dialogues like with you. I have found other ways to still do my work, to still empower and inspire my clients, and not being in the woe is me.
Well, yeah, well, there's so many great thoughts that come to my mind. One of the first ones, though, is I saw a picture this week on Facebook, and I was doing something and I didn't capture it, and then all of a sudden I couldn't find it again. And there was this beautiful young woman who basically had no arms, and she's sitting there with a paintbrush in her mouth, painting one of the most beautiful pictures I've ever seen. And so I wanted to capture that picture and say, okay, so what was your excuse again? But here's where it gets interesting. So I said I didn't catch who posted it on Facebook, and I didn't find it. So I Googled painters without arms. Well, then all of a sudden it turns out there's lots of them. Some of them are up there painting with their feet. Some of them, have figured out how to hold it in their teeth and all kinds of things like that. Well, then all of a sudden I come across this woman who's a massage therapist. She doesn't have any arms, but she's rigged up a bench so that she could put a person underneath her bench, and she can actually do that with her feet. I mean, if you really want to be honest, the excuses that most people, and myself included, want to go ahead and act on are pretty lame. And then that leads me to the other thing. A couple of weeks ago, I know you saw it, the one where I wrote a blog post about this, said, what does Darren Hardy, Brendan Burchard, Larry Winget, and Bob Berg have in common? And the answer was that I had met all of these guys, and when these guys are with you, they are fully present. And I thought the really big hammer on that was when I talked to Larry Winget. I didn't even know who Larry Winget was. Bob Berg, I go to a Bob Berg event, and Bob sits him down right next to me. Corey, this is somebody you got to meet. This is Larry Winget, and he's going to speak tomorrow, and I thought you guys would really hit it off, And so it doesn't take long when somebody's sitting next to you with a book that says, shut up, stop whining, and getting a life, to figure out what Larry does. And so I asked him, I said, well, Larry, I'm really sort of a budding speaker, and I really want to get out there and do it, but I get so excited that I don't know if I can sleep the night before I'm going to give a big speech. I said, what do you think about that? And he looks at me, takes a deep breath, and says, son, I get paid a lot of money to do what I do, so come showtime, there is nothing else, period. And that was like all he had to say, and that was really interesting to watch him the next day and just do it like that. You got Larry both barrels between your eyes, whether you agreed with him or not. And that is what successful people do. They show up.
I love Larry. Now, the funny thing about Larry is it's like a culture shock. And I find that people are either going to love him or hate him because he is so upfront. He so is in your face. Now, the other things I do want to bring up is Larry and all the people that you brought up are also people that, yes, they're that way on stage. However, when they come off stage, they're not putting on a facade. The four speakers that you mentioned are people that, in my personal opinion, and I've seen all of them speak and listen to various courses and what have you, and I've had the honor of interviewing a few of them, is that they do walk their talk. In other words, it's really, for me anyways, having been in the speaker industry for so long, it's really harming. I think for a lot of people, they see a speaker on stage and they get so jazzed and they're so excited and they buy the course because they see what they see on stage. The reality is, though, when these people get off the stage, that is not who they are. That is not how they live. And so why I value the speakers that you were mentioning is because they really do live that. And Larry, I find, for a specific thing, I love his shock value because it really wakes people up. When he says you're fat because you want to be, and when he says, like you said, stop whining and get a life, or it's your fault, you know what I'm saying? People usually feel assaulted, and it's kind of interesting, and they don't really look within to find out why they're in a certain space or why they feel a certain way. And he's right. If you're getting paid X amount of dollars to perform something, like I was, had that interview, no matter if I was in the hospital or not, I had an obligation to that person, and it was complicated to cancel it because we had already scheduled it months and months in advance, and I hadn't had my surgery date yet, and then by the time I did get it, it was way close to when I had honored the interview. So, again, I had a choice in that moment. So as Larry says, when we have commitments and when we've said yes to something, you need to step up to the plate, or know that you're not going to be able to step up to the plate and be willing and honest with yourself to say, no, sorry, I can't do that right now because of X, Y, and Z. Be honest about it. Be honest about your no's and honor your yeses. I think that is one of the most amazing, impactful things to change people's life, is really getting clear on your yeses and nos.
Oh, I agree totally, and it doesn't just apply to speakers, it applies to everybody. I think everybody's had a coworker call them and say, well, I said I would work for you tomorrow, but, something came up and blah, 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 blah. Well, once somebody like Carly Alyssa says, I said I would work for you tomorrow, there is no second discussion. And that's what sets people like you apart, is that once you've committed, there isn't a back door. It's like the bridge behind you burnt when you said yes. And what's really amazing about that is that follows you everywhere you go. I had a speech with a cross-country team this morning, and I said to them, what's really important for you guys to understand is how you do cross-country is how you do everything. And so we're not only going to just talk about strategies for cross-country, we're going to talk about high performance. We're going to talk about, like you said, honoring your commitments, that commitment to yourself. And I think that's where a lot of people really struggle, and that's what Larry's talking about, because that's a huge part of Larry's, I don't know how you call it for Larry, his act, his routine, his speech, but hey, if you said you'd pay back the money, no matter how many jobs you got to get to pay back the money, you pay back the money. So I agree with you totally. It's walking your talk is really interesting, because when this is all said and done, when somebody is giving our eulogy, everybody in the room is going to know this is the kind of guy who did what he said he would when he said he would. And I think, you can't ask for much more than that from a person.
Oh, no, absolutely. What I'd like to go from here is I want to address a little bit about what type of decision maker you are. Because as you know, I put up a post that basically, what type of decision maker you are, and I had a bowl of fruit. And I actually do this exercise, and the funny thing is I do this exercise in very different platforms. I do it literally in a meeting with CEOs where I'm doing some consulting, and I do it for a reason. As I told you before, I walk someone to their car. My fruit bowl experiment tells me a lot to what I'm walking into. They don't know exactly why I'm doing it. Now, in certain forums, they actually say, and I always make sure to do this exercise right before a break, so they know that the passing of the bowl of fruit, they're actually then going to be able to eat the fruit. So I always make sure that that's tied into it. So it's always right before a break. And basically, I have a bowl of fruit with everything: apples, oranges, tangerines, peaches, bananas, and I really just pass it to whoever's at the front of the table and say, hey, can you please pass this around? This is going to be our snack for when we go on break. And it'll give us some high energy because it's fruit, it's natural, and I kind of talk that story in. And then I watch. I watch as the bowl of fruit goes around, and it's very fascinating to watch. I'll get somebody that gets the bowl, and they'll immediately pick a fruit out. Then I'll get another person, and they'll actually look at the bowl, kind of puzzled, and they may pick one up, look at it, and put it back, and then take another one. Right? And then other people will actually want to take more than one. And I always say, please just take one piece of fruit. Some people may want to have more than one. And the funny thing is, in the comments, as you saw that I was getting back, some people actually said to me, well, that's silly. That's just a bowl of fruit. That type of decision isn't the same type of decision or decision process I would make if it was for something business-oriented or something that was really important. And I would basically tell those people to actually go back and look a little bit, because those little traits that you do when you're picking the piece of fruit out of the bowl do show up even in major decision moments, even in life-threatening decision moments. So what are your thoughts on that whole exercise with picking the fruit out of the bowl, and do those traits apply in not just the exercise of the bowl of fruit, but how would that apply in something that's really important in a big decision?
Well, it really gives you a lot of insight into a person's character. Because I know that, I was making jokes when you sent that to me ahead of time and about, well, I'm a nonconformist and I would go get ice cream. But what I would really do is I would take the bowl and I would pass it to the next guy, and then I would take the bowl after everybody else had gotten their chance, because that's the go-giver in me. A lot of people look at it as just a piece of fruit, and a lot of people then look at every decision as, well, it's just another decision. Those aren't the people you want making their decisions for you. What you want is people who have already thought through, if someone gave me a piece of fruit today, which one would I want? because those are what's called forecasters. Those are what's called visionaries, people that can go ahead and make sure that other people are taken care of, but that at the same time they're taken care of through other people. So I think that, yes, I think that is amazing. I also do think that you are right, and when you talk in terms of when big decisions or emergencies come up. I was something also that came up on Brendan's high performance video this week, where he was talking about one time when he was having a seminar. This guy had a seizure right in the middle of the seminar, and he literally had to take control of the whole entire room because people started panicking. And when he got control of the room, then all of a sudden the energy from those people was transformed to the guy with the seizure, and that really helped the outcome. So one of the things that we have to realize is that how you do the little things is how you do the big things. You know, and I've seen those people sit there and go, oh, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Those aren't the people that you want to be there when the guy has the seizure. So I think it's a really interesting thing. You know, myself personally, for whatever reason, I don't want to go to 10 stores and then go back and buy the red one that I saw at the first store. But I have a friend who cannot make a decision any other way because she feels that if she doesn't go to all the stores, she might miss out on the blue car. Very fascinating. Very, very fascinating. And that story there just quickly reminds me of something that Darren Hardy told us at his high performance forum that I went to in January. He said a lot of people aren't successful because they're so stuck on what might be coming next that they can't function in the moment. I think it's amazing.
So I want to touch on some of those traits. One of the traits a lot of people don't think of, if I see a person take one piece of fruit out, put it back, and then take another, it tells me that those people are second guessing their decisions. And if you're in a big, big decision moment and you don't have the type of personality where you can actually really think and act and you're second guessing everything, I've seen so many people that are second guessers, and that's when it goes back to your unconscious monkeys and ants. The people that second guess don't realize that it's usually something unconscious. It's an unconscious pattern that you don't trust your intuition. You don't trust the decisions you're making. So I like that one because a lot of people I think don't see that when you're doing that, it really does show something. And going to what you were talking about, and you're going to have to refresh my memory because I'm blanking out right now, but repeat what you just said about you were just at that conference and he brought up one specific thing.
Well, Darren Hardy said that most people can't go forward because they're so busy worrying about what they might be missing in the future. If I act on this specific piece of information, I'm not able to function properly if I'm worried about what might be coming next or what else I might be able to learn. So a lot of people go to seminar after seminar after seminar after seminar, and they don't put any of it into action because they're so busy thinking, well, if I just learn one more thing, then maybe I'll be ready to go. It's what you call planning for success but not ever succeeding. So I thought that was really fascinating because it is that second guessing thing. I don't know enough now, but if I just knew a little more. But unfortunately, that cup never gets full.
So perfect. You remind me of what I was talking about. So that ties into the could've, should've, would've's, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and the problem with that is we're living in the past, and guess what? We can't change the past. So why are you focused on the past? What happened yesterday, I can't change. What I can do now is learn from that and go, I did this yesterday, that didn't work out so well. So what am I going to do next time to make it better or different? Or, you know, you have to get out of those habits and learn from them. So that's the analysis of paralysis, where we actually take our past, we get focused on the regrets, we get focused on the drama, and then we have to look at what is our unconscious attachment to that drama? Why do we keep repeating that pattern over and over and over again? Because bottom line is, if you didn't like where you were, you would do something to change it. However, there's usually something that you're attached to. You're getting some sort of benefit, whether it be that you get to play the victim or you get to play the person, well, I can't do this because of this. There's always some sort of reason, or that we don't want the responsibility, because guess what? As we become more successful, as we have more money, we're going to have more responsibilities. Some people don't want those responsibilities. And be honest with yourself. If you don't want those responsibilities, just say, hey, I don't want to have those type of responsibilities. I'd rather be like this, but be open and honest with yourself.
Oh, I agree. You know, that's where that whole safe life versus real life, you know, comes into play. many people are so wrapped up by the fear monkey that they can hardly go forward at all, because they would much rather stay in a position where they're miserable than fear what might be coming next if they try something they've never tried before. That's why, a lot of people are stuck in relationships that never get any better, because those people feel that, well, this is as good as it might ever get for me, and I'm so scared that if I let go of this, that the future might be worse. Now, you and I figure if the future's worse, you move on to a new future. And that's how you beat the fear monkey, by realizing that something Napoleon Hill said is really, really true. Nothing that life has to offer is worth the price of worry. So you have to make an agreement with yourself that, you know what? I don't know what's out there for me. I've got to go out there and find out, because when life is all over, and I've been a pharmacist now for 25 years, and I've talked to people who were 60 when I met them, and they're on their way out in their 80s, and they say, Corey, I look back almost every day now and say, you know what? I could have made that happen, but I chickened out. And to me, that fear of regret has gotten so large that the fear of the future just dwarfs it. So I think it's really important that we really realize that what we're talking about is the fear monkey. And the fear monkey feeds on the ants. So the more times we give him the automatic negative thoughts to feed on, the bigger, the fatter he gets, and the harder he gets to push off our shoulders.
So what I would like to end with today is letting people know that basically one of the ways to stamp out those ants is who we surround ourselves with. And I don't just mean it's more than just who. It's also your environment. What is your environment like? What type, are you doing anything for your body health-wise? What type of foods are you eating? Yes, it is what type of people you hang around with. However, it all ties in. What type of music are you listening to? So if you want to be in a positive space, if you want to be in a space where you're going to learn, surround yourself with people that know more than you. Surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that have your core values, because that's a big one. A lot of people sell out, like you said, well, I don't want to be alone, so I'd rather just be in this relationship that really isn't working. You really need to honor your core values, and you need to surround yourself with people that are like that. If you are doing things that are not in alignment with your values, you're going to get into a lot of trouble, and you're going to have a lot of regrets, and that's when you get stuck in the what-ifs, could-haves, should-haves, and all that. So really think about your space. Think about your environment. Think about the people that are around you. Who are your friends? Who are the people that you look up to? Who are your mentors? Do you have a mentor? I think mentors are fabulous.
Oh, I agree. And the thing is that you are the one that controls that environment. I always tell my coaching clients, you have to understand that you are stealing from the people that you could help if you let yourself be held back by negative environments, by negative people, by negative information, and even, I think, in this day and age, by the media. If you let yourself be held back by all the negative influence and don't go out and actually clean your brain with positive influences, you're probably stealing from someone who could learn from what you've been through.
Now, that's something you said that I think is so important. There was a couple pieces out there, and there's been some movies and some empowering blogs. You never know who is waiting to hear exactly what you have to say. Don't ever think that what you have to say is not important, because you never know. You could be helping someone that might just be on the brink of suicide, and they hear what you have to say, and that very little, that may seem so little to you, can mean everything to them. So don't take things for granted. And I think that's a huge one. We just don't know who we're touching. These conversations you and I are having, Corey, and it's also what we write. It's like, what are you putting out there? What are you putting on your blog posts? What are you putting on your Facebook pages? What is it that you're tweeting out? Are you empowering or are you disempowering? And I think that is a huge one. What do you want to be known as, and who do you want to empower and inspire?
That's one of the things
belittle yourself.
Oh, I agree totally. One of the things I've been saying a lot this week is that it's interesting how there are no shortage of people who want to feed your monkeys. So don't be a monkey feeder for someone else. But what you said is interesting, because I know that you write a lot of blogs and you get comments almost every week from someone you've never even heard of. So you couldn't have helped that person if you didn't have the guts to hit the publish button. It isn't always great. I had one this week where I put out, and my mentor came to me and he said, your work needs work. So I reworked it, and then it was amazing. So just because you hit the publish button doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but somebody might learn from it. If you don't have the courage to hit that publish button, you're stealing from someone.
And one thing I just want to address that you said was really important. Your mentor came to you and said, hey, you know what? This isn't great. It needs a little work. We also need to be willing to be honest with the people that we surround ourselves with. For example, I just filled out this thing for a private group that I'm looking at, and there was a whole survey we needed to fill out. And they had an error. They actually said, go to this question, and anyways, my point is, in the feedback button, I actually said, I think you meant to say this number versus this number. Now, I wasn't being mean, I was being honest, and it really was an error. If we're not willing to be honest with others, how do you expect people to be honest with us? We have to be willing to give feedback and also to take the feedback. You took the feedback from your mentor, you went back to your blog post, you reworked it, rewrote it, and then submitted it. And then your mentor came back and said, what?
He loved it then.
Exactly. I mean, our mentors are amazing. We learn so much from them. And I just think mastermind groups and there's a lot of free mastermind groups. I don't want to get people, a lot of people get tied in the I don't have the money to. And what I would say to those people is there's a lot of valuable resources out there that are free. There is the world of the internet. There's plenty of platforms now with forums that are free. You have a problem, you have an issue, get the help you need. Find someone that's willing to work with you. It could be that you start out with a barter where it's bartering because you're in a really bad place, and then that moves yourself up to then it's half barter and half pay. So eventually you are paying someone back. So don't be so tied down to I don't have the money. I think that is the worst excuse in the world. There's always a way that you can find somebody. For example, in my practice, when I work with my coaching clients, I save 25% of my business, that's sliding scale. Because I know there's a lot of people that can't afford my services because I work with a lot of people on a lot of things that are a lot of time, they're very time consuming. So I do have 25% of my business that is on a sliding scale where I take people that have had nothing and I'm moving them up slowly on the scale to where it's barter, half pay, full pay, and actually where they're paying me back from the times where I actually helped them where they weren't paying me. I just really want people to get that it isn't about the money. You have to find another way if you think that just because you have no money, there is no way. There is always a way. Find it.
Well, and for sure, because you never know where that's going to lead. I put off hiring a coach for a long, long time, and I met a lady that I really, really connected with. And she's actually, fairly cheap for as wonderful as she is. But whenever I talk to her, I know that I probably quadruple the money that I spend on it just in the inspiration and the ability to say, hey, have you thought about it this way? So that going down the road, we're going to make that money back 100 times. And that's where the feeling of abundance, we have to really cultivate and say, you know what? Every time we're where we are today, we're just one step closer to where we could be if we totally took off the reins.
So Corey, as usual, it's been so delightful having you here and having this brilliant conversation, and I just want everyone to know that we love feedback, so please leave your feedback if you have any, and if there's something that you'd love to hear more about or you have some questions about, please feel free to leave that as well. As usual, there'll be a page with an embedded video as well as an embedded podcast with all of Corey's information as well as all the other information that you could possibly need. So I really thank you, Corey, for being here with me once again, and I wish everybody a fabulous day to your success.
Take care, everyone. It's been a great half hour.